My book won't cure anxiety. My book will take care of the despair you feel around anxiety. And spoiler alert, it'll just help you realize anxiety is not a problem. It's not going to give you a solution because there's no problem to solve. It's an experience to have.
Hey, USG family. I am so grateful to be here with you. I'm Julie, your host, as you know, and today we've got an amazing guest. I'm here with Humble the Poet. Love, love, love your name. And we are talking all about, first of all, Humble's book. I'm just going to share it with you, which is awesome. It's called Unanxious. We're going to dive deep into all of these different tools and ways of shifting the way we look at anxiety and finding inner peace and so much more. Humble, thank you for being here. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to have you for this conversation. I've been really, really looking forward to this for a long time. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Your happiness is super contagious. Like the happier you get, the happier I feel. So that's great.
Thank you. It is something. I know I'm really like, this is so fun. I've been and I think a good place to start, I am not the only one, I am sure, who has struggled with anxiety in life, and it shows up in many different ways. And I know just from listeners writing in and sharing comments, I mean, I think with so much uncertainty in the country and our world, like it's just growing. So let's start with like what made you decide to even tackle this topic? Was this something you struggled with? I know I'm asking a big question. I'll let you take it from whatever thread you want. But this is an important topic, really important, what you're writing
Ye-
about.
Yeah, I wrote the book before this was about love, and I was such a idealistic romantic where I was like, there is nothing more important on this earth than love. So I'm going to write this book, and this is probably going to be the last book I ever write because what else is there to write about? And what else could I squeeze out of life other than love? And the book was done, and I was very emotionally naked writing that book. And as soon as you finish a book, and I'm sure you're aware of this, you got to go on your press tour. And a press tour isn't doing interviews. That's not the hard part. The press tour is getting interviews, reaching out, and even today I had somebody be like, you should be on so and so's podcast. And I was like, do you think it's just like a button I flick to get on somebody's podcast? It's like, you get invited or you try to get yourself invited. So that process after the love book felt like, I was emotionally naked, and then trying to get on people's podcasts felt like swimming in salt water.
Mm.
It was so difficult. And it got to the point where certain people who had podcasts who were friends of mine, I was very hesitant to even reach out to them, knowing with them, I was already invited on and we're just having logistical conversations. We're just going to have a scheduling conversation. And I found myself hesitating a lot. And I realized that that was where a lot of anxious feelings were coming from. The anxious feelings were preventing me from doing
Mm.
some of the easiest things in this process. And I wanted to have a deeper understanding of what these anxious feelings meant. Even getting reassurance, even telling some of them that I had these challenges, asking them for help, and them trying to reassure me that not doing enough to make the anxious feelings go away. So that's what prompted it. And that was, I want to say, mid 2022. That's when this all began. And whoa, has it been a journey? And this is probably the first book where the journey has been more intense after it came out than before, where I
Mm.
could probably write a whole new book on anxiety as much as I've learned in the last 30 days.
Okay, now I'm like, can you share more? Well, first of
Oh
all,
yeah, I definitely
yeah.
can. I can keep going. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, well, actually, the one thing I think is so fascinating, it almost feels like the book wrote you. So you had this book on love and love that idea of like, what else is there to say? And then the challenge around getting on the podcast, the anxiety, it's like the mess in the message. You realized, holy moly, like that's actually what I need to be writing about and looking at. That's powerful. And it says something that you stopped, paused, and shifted to really address that. I mean, that's a big deal to me.
Yeah, I think one of the gifts that I've stumbled into in my existence is I get to selfishly work on myself and then share that journey to pay my bills. And what I'm bringing to the table is just because I used to be an elementary school teacher, I'm able to kind of explain these things simpler. So that came from that training, and then Humble the Poet, I write poetry, I write rap. I'm a writer, so it's really about taking those ideas. And absolutely, the book wrote me in that context where it started the journey. And I did the same thing. I'm like, I'll never write again. There's nothing to write about. This time, instead of picking up a new topic, I've just gone significantly deeper in anxiety. Um, I don't think this depth will warrant a book. Uh, I think it'll warrant these conversations, and I'm realizing that. And I think what I this is the first time that I'm, especially with these podcasts, uh, I'm not just talking about what I wrote, which is a product of living life, but also a lot of research and a lot of this is a sensitive topic. Let me make sure I know what I'm talking about. And since then, starting a whole deeper journey, resetting my nervous system
Mm.
through dopamine fasting has, you know, totally unlocked a whole different perspective on anxiety. So now I tell people there's levels on your journey to feel better around anxiety. Level number one, just drink more water, get more sleep, get more sunshine, and stay away from unpleasant people. Right? That's level one. If you want to see how it feels to feel better, these are the four things that you can definitely do. And then step two is get the book. And the reason you need to get the book is because the issue isn't anxiety. The issue is the hopelessness around anxiety. We think we have a lot of despair around anxiety. We feel like we don't know what to do. And this book will give you over 50 things to do around anxiety. So you'll feel a lot more empowered. And one of the first things it's going to do is teach you that anxiety is not your enemy. Anxiety isn't a problem. Having anxious feelings doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Rather, the opposite. Anxiety is a signal, just like hunger. And we don't get hungry and think something's wrong with us. We get hungry and we address the signal. And most of the time, a hunger signal actually means we're hungry. Sometimes a hunger signal doesn't mean we're hungry. And I think that's important to know. It's the same thing with anxiety. It's just a significantly older security system that we have that really isn't relevant to the world that we live in today. So, what we have to do is understand this system, why it exists, why we're constantly paranoid or hypervigilant, realize that 500 years ago, being paranoid and hypervigilant was important and necessary. And our biology will never catch up to the speed that we have modernized life. So it's outdated tools, and there's a lot of work that's required to reboot your system and install new software. And it's challenging work, but it'll help you update your software for the world that we live in, which is by design and for profit here to continually make us more anxious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, amen to that. And I know we're not going to go through all 50 of the truths. People, I highly recommend the book. It's funny. One of the quotes, I think it was on 105, was literally about it's not a problem to have anxiety. It's the idea of a signal. It made me chuckle because I struggled with food addiction. I'm very open about it, and the signal of hunger. I still get this where I'm like, am I hungry, or actually I'm looking for sweetness in life. I'm looking for comfort. So it's a similar what I'm hearing, pause and listen to what is this signal versus judging it that there's something wrong.
yeah,
Um,
I think that they're all rivers leading to the same ocean.
yeah.
And what you illustrated with the food, I think is a great place to start. We have this relationship with our body where we've taught our body now something outside of us has to happen for us to feel safe on the inside, right? And a craving is just a memory of comfort. That's why we had the craving. So like last time I had this, I felt comfortable. And an addiction is wanting more of that thing that almost works, right? So it's whether it's food, whether it's your phone, whether it's validation, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's porn, it's all the same relationship. It's chasing something that You want more of it, even though it only almost works. And you have these memories that it brought you comfort. And we have memories of people that bring us comfort. And then once we're around them, we're like, wait, this isn't as comfortable as I thought it was, because we have selective memory when it comes to these things. So what it really is our goal has to be to feel our feelings. And all these choices that we're making is to distract, avoid, and medicate what we think are unpleasant feelings when really there's a signal for our anxiety. Now, what is anxiety like from a scientific standpoint? It's just adrenaline and cortisol flowing through our body as our body thinks it's preparing us for a threat. Again, 500 years ago, anxiety would have been triggered when we were in physical danger. Now, anxiety triggers when you get an awkward text message or an email, or you're waiting to hear back from somebody, or you spill mustard on your shirt and you're afraid to go outside, or you're going to be in a room full of people you don't know. The body doesn't know the details of the situation. It's just like, this is new, this is uncomfortable, it must be dangerous. Let's get you ready to fight or flight. Let's get you ready. And all that extra cortisol, cortisol you can associate with gray hair, like that's where it comes from. That's why people who are more stressed go gray quicker. It's the chemicals getting released. And the reason we're not improving it is because we've been taught that whenever you feel the anxiety, like whenever the alarm or signal goes off, let's just hit snooze. Let's just shut it up. It's like if you have a smoke detector, what we're being taught right now is like grab the smoke detector, rip it off the ceiling, or pull out the battery, or smash it with a hammer. Instead of, hey, let's look for the smoke. If we address the smoke, this alarm will go off much less. It's the exact same thing. And it's going to be a lot of work because one of the reason we get the anxiety signals is because the part of our brain, the amygdala, the survival brain, keeps determining things are dangerous. And its definition of dangerous is so wide. It's literally, is this new? Danger. Is this uncomfortable? Danger. Right? Is this going to be more work than I want it to be? Danger. Does this rhyme with anything that hurt me in the past? Danger. Right? There's studies saying we subconsciously dislike people more who have the same names as our exes. Like we get triggered by simple things. What a trigger is. A trigger is a reminder of what you went through. And so all of these things are happening, and that's where it's revealed. So when we were younger, if we suffered physical trauma, you fell off your bike, you knew you got hurt. You addressed it, whether it was putting a bandage on the scrape, putting a cast on the broken leg, gave it time to heal, made lifestyle adjustments to allow it to heal, and then it healed, and then you slowly got back on your foot. When we were kids and we had emotional trauma, emotional injuries, we just kept moving.
Yeah.
And now they've all piled up. They're the size of an iceberg. And our journaling and our meditating and all of these different practices are just showing us the tip. And it's what we literally have to do is we have to peel away endlessly to find them all because we're going to find core wounds. And what's important with all of this is it goes back to our relationship, which is for us to feel better from these signals, we think something's wrong with these signals, but they're not. And we keep relying on outside sources of dopamine. As I said, our phone, food, substances, alcohol, weed. We keep looking outside. And the problem with the external dopamine, the issue with this external dopamine is that it hijacks you, right? It's dopamine is motivation. So the purpose of dopamine is to let you know you're on the right path. So keep doing what you're doing, right? Internal dopamine is great. If you're at the gym and you're working out and you're feeling the progress, it's gonna flood you with dopamine to keep doing what you're doing. But external dopamine is you go on your phone and it gives you this external dirty dopamine and it's still telling you the same thing. Keep doing what you're doing. Every time you feel kind of gross, just grab your phone. Every time you need to eat, just stare at your phone. Every time you got to go to the bathroom, just stare at your phone. And then we train our bodies that it's necessary. And I think a lot of your listeners will know this because they probably have a relationship with their screens when it comes to their everyday activities. And if you want to see where the anxiety is, just put the screen away for one meal, or don't take it to the bathroom with you. And this isn't judgment. This is data. This is just revealing where it is. And if you constantly eat in front of a screen and you suddenly don't put on a screen, don't put on the TV, don't put on your TikToks or whatever you're watching, don't listen to a podcast, don't do that extra thing, don't do that multitasking, then you're going to start to feel that burn in your chest. You're going to feel the cortisol and adrenaline, and you're going to want it to go away. And you're going to go back to your choices of medicating, avoiding, and distracting. But if we sit with it, if we actually sit with it, and we tell the body, yes, this sucks, but we're not in danger.
Right.
It sucks, but there's no urgency here. And the longer we sit with it, it will pass. We can breathe through it and it will pass. And the more that we do that, the less it'll happen. And all of a sudden, your basic baseline of calm and safety just from existing will be so low that you will literally discover a whole new lens of life. And again, this is biological, this is psychological. I'm not even coming from a spiritual standpoint right now. This is all facts. This is all scientifically backed. You got a baseline, how you feel safe. And where we're at right now is that we're not chasing all these pleasure dopamines to uh, feel better. We're chasing all these things to feel less worse.
Mm,
We're already in the negative. We're just trying to get back to zero.
yeah.
We're doing all these things to just pull the release valve and release all the tension. But if you do the hard work of just abstaining from these things, even for a couple of weeks, your baseline will get back to zero naturally. And then you can reintroduce this stuff and it will just take you into the positives and it'll just shift your relationship from needing it to just enjoying it when you decide you want to enjoy it. One of the analogies I like to use is hot sauce. If you ate one drop of hot sauce every day, eventually you won't taste it. So then you're going to need two. Then you're going to need three. Then it's going to keep escalating. That's our relationship with stimulations and distractions and medications and dopamine. The more that we turn to it, the more we're going to need more of it and keep escalating. And we're going to keep going. Versus if you just go cold turkey and it's going to suck. I'm not saying it's easy. The concept is simple. The actions are not. If you go cold turkey long enough, you can reset your system to A, again, enjoy hot sauce, one drop, but B, not be dependent on it to the point where like, oh, I can't eat the food. I forgot my hot sauce. This restaurant doesn't have hot sauce. We can't eat here. And it's the same thing with all these external things. We need to shift from creating, outsourcing relief, going back to realizing we are the source of relief. We don't have to protect our peace. Our peace can protect us.
Mm. That is so powerfully said. And I think, it goes back to, I believe this too. It's always it's inner first. It's an inner job. So sourcing that inner peace inside. It's not about finding it. I don't know that we do find it on the outside. It comes from within. I love the hot sauce example. For me, it would be sugar, and so I don't eat it.
Yeah.
I am curious, what we will get to that. I would love to ask you about the spiritual aspect of it too, but you had mentioned in the beginning when we started chatting that after you got this book out and that you saw anxiety start to build, after, once the book is birthed, now being on podcasts, showing up, can you share a little more about your going through your own anxiety and what has helped you that you teach in your book with that?
Yeah. So I think a lot of anxiety, uh, a lot of anxious feelings can come around uh, our need for control, right? We want certainty. And when there's uncertainty, we'll have more anxious feelings. So, the way that I would procrastinate from writing the book is to daydream about how I'm going to promote the book, how I'm going to market the book, some cool things I'll do on social media. So that's kind of how I avoid writing the book while I'm supposed to be writing it. And then when it's time to promote the book, I'll start daydreaming about writing another one. Like it's just, this is how my brain, and I'm very well aware of it. So for years while I was working on this book, and this is my fourth major book, so the art and craft of writing, I'm improving. I'm writing my books I'm writing books much quicker. Would have taken me a lot longer in the past. I'm doing it quicker. So this book allowed me to write it quickly and then have probably 6 months of a finished book that I could just go back into and be an overthinker and be a perfectionist. I'm like, it's done. Now I can just keep going granularly and look at every word, every syllable, and get picky. And until we hit print. And then I had this amazing, quote unquote marketing rollout to happen. And I was like, everything's lined up, everything's great. And then the first thing that happens is I was supposed to start reaching out to people in January 2020. The book came out April 1st, 2025. I was supposed to start reaching out to people in January to start getting on shows. And 90% of the podcasts are in Los Angeles, and they had the fires. And it was a combination of never saw this coming. Also, everybody has significantly more important things to worry about. Also, even if people aren't directly impacted by it, they're hosting people in their homes. And that set off a certain trigger. But at the same time, I had spent the last 2 years off of social media. But now that I was in marketing, I was diving right back in. And social media is just like a salty potato chip. Yeah, you can go 3 years without eating one, but once you eat one, it'll wake it all back up. And so that month of not reaching out to people, plus being back on social media, took my resilience all the way down. And there were a couple of other, scenarios and situations that were happening in my personal life to where I ended up not being able to reach out to people until March. And then you're like, yeah, sure, you can come on, but we can't get you on till June. We can't get you on till May. We can't get you on till 3 weeks after your book drops. And then the story I always told myself is you got to get on all the podcasts the week before the book drops. You got to get that first week number. The almighty algorithm's going to see all the activity. So just all these stories. And I had that story come true with the last book. And I thought I needed to keep doing it that way. And this was the exact opposite. This book was released. I had no major interviews. I had no major abilities to do an announcement. I'm audaciously trying to exist on social media when the almighty algorithm is like, you haven't fed us in 2.5 years, and now you want to like post something and assume the world just gets to get broadcasted again. Like we don't care how many followers you have. They've forgotten about you. And even today I had somebody who would be considered, a super supporter just find out about the book today because another big interview dropped. And it's like you can follow someone on Instagram and never see their stuff. That's the nature of these things. So it's just learning that the world kept changing. This isn't 2019 anymore or 2012 when you had 10 followers and 10 people saw it. Now you can have 500,000 followers like I do, and a fraction of them will a large fraction of them will never know. And I think a lot of that, it had to challenge the stories in my head. What were these stories in my head? What things need to be? And that led me into understanding that this was never about releasing a book and being honest with myself. It's like, you are not releasing a book because you're on this genuine, you know, altruistic mission to help people with their emotions. Like, you're here, you derive your value through your work, and you derive your value through the attention that your work gets. You derive your value through the ability of being a creative who can afford New York rent prices. Like, you derive your value in all these superficial metrics. You just happen to work in a wellness space where you can just decorate it in wellness and self-awareness and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if the book flops and you can't pay your bills, you're going to consider yourself a failure. Somebody writing a message saying your book saved my life, you're just, authentically going to be like, well, that won't pay my bills. That won't even pay my puppy's bills. She has expensive habits too. And I think I got to that point and I realized it was my relationship with, my own external spaces and my own external need for dopamine. And in order to figure out what those sources of dopamine were, I began a journey of like complete abstinence, celibacy, just name it. It's not happening. And that journey's been well over a month now. And just the clarity and the sovereignty that's been developing through that has been super transformative, because now I'm not only am I speaking from a place of, oh, I wrote the book, I did the research, I simplified the concepts, which I think is a really important thing. A lot of this information has always been out there, but it's not accessible to people unless they are used to reading university level text. And I think I'm doing important work by simplifying it and writing it at a grade 6 level, which is generally the goal for my work, is to write it at a 6th grade level. But now there's also a lot more earned wisdom. And I do write personal stories in the book, and those personal stories are great. And I think for an introduction to anxiety, it's there. But for my own personal work, if I wrote the book to anxiety, I'm not a beginner anymore. I'm not a white belt. So I need to start raising the belts for my own personal work. So this relationship where I've let go of as many external sources of dopamine and relief and medication and distractions as I can has really helped me realize even internally how many internal sources that I've been able to do, because you're not only killing cravings of alcohol or marijuana or sex, you're also addressing cravings of needing my family's approval. I may not count the likes and follows that I have on social media as much or participate as much, but I still have little group chats with my friends where if I leave a comment, their validation matters. And if I said a joke and nobody responded, it would actually kind of impact my mood. That's still external outsourcing to feel safe and calm. So this started revealing to me that there's layers, there's multiple layers, and yeah, the big stuff is the simple stuff to recognize: drugs, social media, dating apps, pornography. Yeah, that's all the simplest stuff to recognize. But when you start getting deeper in these layers, validation from other people, you know, having political debates with friends, recognizing that, hey, we see things differently. Let's debate it out. Let's prove our points. But it's like, none of us work for any government agencies. None of us can influence policy. We're just doing this. This is another form of masturbation almost. We're just trying to feel better by getting our voices and our expressions out. And it's less about the individual activities, it's about the intention behind it. And what I realized is, like, if we're using it as a release valve to get relief, then we're enslaving ourselves to it. And the analogy that I've been working on, I was working on it this morning, hoping it could make sense for this podcast, is like, just imagine we have two balloons and they're connected to the same valve. So they share air. And every choice we make is either feeding one or the other. So one would be, the smaller balloon would be our slavery, and the larger balloon would be our sovereignty. And every decision we make, we're either feeding our slavery or we're feeding our sovereignty. So it's like when we choose, on autopilot to look at our phone, we're feeding that slavery. And the thing is, that the balloon that is slavery is smaller. So it can only hold so much. Whereas the balloon that's sovereignty has so much more capacity. So the more we feed our sovereignty, the more we can deal with this dumpster fire that is the modern world. But the more we feed the slavery balloon, the more likely we are to pop. And that's what we call depression. It's what we call burnout. These things are real, and this is why they happen, because even our bodies can no longer hold all the weight of coping because we're not addressing these things. So I realize every choice I make, and it's like, okay, I did a big interview today. Oh, the phone's blowing up. If I start checking that, I'm just getting micro hits of dopamine. And those are micro leaks. They may not be as dangerous as taking 7 shots of tequila in terms of filling up the slavery balloon, but air's leaving one and going into the other. And if enough momentum comes from one way to the other, then we're in that slippery slope territory. And I thought when I started this journey, I was like, there's no way I like smoking weed. There's no way I can give that up. And it's like, that's the least of my concerns now. Now it's catching my brain rehearsing fantasies of conversations I haven't had yet, or replaying conversations I've already had. These are also relief valves. And the goal is to stop chasing outward relief valves and sit with the feeling that you're trying to get relief from and let it exist. Allow it to be the guest in your hotel. Allow it to trash the room, and then just clean up after it, because there's value in feeling that, and that strengthens our resilience. And I think a lot of that has to do with how far the pendulum swung the other way when it comes to the mental health talk. We focus on mental health, but now we use it to self-diagnose. We use it as an excuse to have certain type of avoidant behavior. I have to protect my mental health. I can't be around certain people. I have to protect my mental health. I can't come into work today. But what we need to focus on and prioritize is our mental fitness. And mental fitness is voluntarily leaning into the hard mental stuff, the hard emotional stuff, so we build resilience. And the process of building resilience and the process of being resilient, it's not a pleasant feeling. It's just like being brave. In order to be brave, you have to feel fear. In order to be resilient, you have to deal with unpleasant emotions and thoughts and feelings that are happening within you. And that's what I've been realizing, that this all goes back to actually being a human being instead of becoming this person who's constantly a human doing. We're always just doing stuff. And we're not just doing stuff because we like being productive. We're doing stuff because that's how we medicate, distract, and avoid these feelings that are in us. And all of that doing is filling up the wrong balloon.
Mm. Wow, really, really powerfully said. I actually just want to acknowledge something with you. I so appreciate your vulnerability, your authenticity, and when you were talking about, I know our beloved. I know you're still with us listening. You're gonna relate to this. I know anyone listening is gonna relate to this. This feeling of, Humble, you were saying, I heard really looking for approval, for worthiness, for acceptance. And so these ways of doing that never really serve the root of it. I know you're a poet. I'm a huge fan of Rumi. Like I just am obsessed with everything that Rumi has written, and it talks about going to the root of the root of the root and kissing it all the way, from all the way down, all the way up. And it reminded me, he said a couple things. I'm like, oh my God, that's Rumi too. Like you did, and really getting to the root though is worthiness, feeling not worthy or not good enough, or that your value is the number of likes. And I know others can relate to this, the follower, the whole social media thing, that in itself, I just want to like sometimes throw it all out the window. It's like it doesn't have a thing to do with value of who we are. And this will probably bring us a little bit into the spiritual aspect, which,
Yeah, and just
you know,
just just before we move into the spiritual, I think
yeah,
the root below the worthiness is safety.
safety.
I
Yes.
need to
Yes.
feel worthy to feel safe,
Yeah.
right? So what we're rarely chasing the thing, we're chasing the feeling associated with the thing.
Yeah.
It's like we're not chasing the $1 million, we're chasing the feeling of having $1 million, which would be the feelings of security
Safety.
and
Yeah.
safety. It always goes back to safety.
Mm,
And this is the thing, we're outsourcing our relief, we're outsourcing our need for safety, we're
yeah.
outsourcing it to these external things which can never do the trick. Like you can post a picture, get 1 million likes,
Say
and
that
then
again. Never, because it's true. That
it
will
will never do.
never.
And that's why it's an addiction.
Yeah.
It's we want more of the thing that
Yeah.
almost works. It doesn't work.
Yes.
External validation almost makes you feel safe, or it makes you feel safe for a couple of days, and then the next post or the next video or the next whatever you're doing, or you want to, as a guy, it's like, okay, I want to meet women and I want to get their validation, and it's like, yeah, but then if that did the trick, it would have ended with the first woman. And then it starts getting deeper. It's like, no, now you've actually created rules where it's like, oh, this was too easy. I need a bigger challenge. And it's like you start devaluing unearned validation. And yeah, there could be a root of I had a difficult mom or I had this, is that. The why I don't even think is important, is just realizing that we're always chasing the feeling of safety, and we've made it someone else's job and they can't do it. So instead of us having this conversation about happiness being an inside job, safety is an inside job. And the only way to achieve the safety is to sit in the discomfort and remind yourself that it's not danger. Like, this feeling sucks, but I'm not in danger. This is where the value of a cold shower or an ice bath comes in, because you sit in it and your body's like, holy crap, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. And it's like, even if you don't say anything, you just sit in there. Eventually, your body's like, wait, we didn't die. I should stop treating this like it's dangerous. And it's like, I mean, I'm sure the first time you did a podcast interview, you were super nervous and your body's like, oh my God, adrenaline, cortisol. And then the more you did it, the less it felt dangerous and the less the adrenaline and cortisol happened. That is not something that we can inspire people with a quote. Your body will catch up to your brain only through practice. You get the book, you'll get 50 different tips to address anxiety, but you can't think your way through anxiety. You have to act your way, and you got to take the baby steps. And again, from another cultural perspective, most of us, our tool belt of skills and talents come from being force fed them as children. And we forgot what it feels like to start from zero. as adults. This is going to require you to start from zero and slowly work your way up. But I promise you, especially with what I've been doing for the last month, this has made me feel invincible because I'm just like, wait, if I could do this, and this is so hard, and I'm not going to underplay how hard this is. I have had so many breakdowns in this journey, but I'm like, if I keep pulling this off, what else could I pull off?
Yeah.
Like, could I have abs? Could I, you know, could I write a symphony? Like, can I, anything that I ever thought I wanted to do? I'm just like, could I ever? And I would just talk myself out of, you're not that guy. You're not capable of it. Now I'm like, I'm doing one of the hardest things we could do as a person, which is just divorcing myself from all external sources of dopamine, the ones I'm aware of. And I still have more work to do to find the next sources. I'm like, then everything else is doable. And I think that's what the gift you get from this is increasing your sovereignty bubble. And when you increase the sovereignty bubble or balloon, we're still working on the analogy, patent pending, the bigger your capacity is. We're not here to chase happiness, we're here to chase capacity. And the bigger your capacity is, the safer you feel in situations that normally felt unsafe. And the easiest one I can tell you is when we feel anxious, we think everything is urgent. And what I can say is the first thing I noticed is how things became so not urgent for me anymore. And I was just like, oh, I just thought that was urgent because I just wasn't living in a good baseline. And now that my baseline is so much lower and my adrenaline, my cortisol is so much lower, nothing feels like a rush. And even earlier, you're bringing up my vulnerability or authenticity. People are not fake. People act how they feel safe to act. Because my baseline has dropped down, I can feel safer to be authentic with you versus me and you having to talk for 3 years to get that repertoire. I have it walking into the room because of this other work that I've been doing.
Yeah.
And this is what I want the listeners to listen to. Now we can pivot to if there's a specific question for spirituality, or I can just keep going on my humble the poet monologues.
Well, I know I love all of this. I think where I would love to bring, what I'd love to bring in, because a lot of what we talk about here, in connecting to really your higher self, right? Which I think of as when we talk about your USG, your this intuitive higher guidance. And I know, well, I'd love to hear, so in terms of as we are brave enough to be still, to sit with our feelings. For me, that was like a PhD level thing. I'm not even kidding. 20 years ago when I looked at this addiction, literally what you were describing, Humble, was really hard to just sit with it and feel uncomfortable. I thought I was going to die. I did. It's like now, it's still not the most fun thing, but I know how to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
as we do more of this sitting and getting quiet, at least what I've noticed, and I think what I've heard, seen a lot, is we start to get more of a attuned to our intuition, to our higher guidance. And I'm curious to just take a look at that in terms of how do you know when it's intuition or fear? Um, and how has your spiritual connection to whatever you call, how has that shifted as you've spent more time in with your feelings, with yourself, with your true self, not the, I think of when you're talking about slavery, I think of like the ego versus love, right? Like the egoic, the fear-based slavery, like whatever word you want to call it. But the more we're with our true self, that all loving presence, I'm curious what's opened up for you. So I just asked you like three questions. You can take whichever one you like and run with
Yeah.
it.
So I think so. My definition of spirituality, and I learned this from an individual named Amar Atma who does end of life work. So he works with people in their final moments. And his definition of spirituality, it resonated with me. It's the art of dealing with suffering. And I think, I'm an author with Hay House, and the joke they always make to me is, it's a very spiritual publishing house, and Louise Hay is there, and they're like, you're the least woo woo, you're the least woo woo of them all, And I think when like spiritual, I guess I love looking at everything as art. For me, I resonate with it. So the art of dealing with suffering. I think I look at spirituality that way. Um, and yeah, what you refer to as, our loving selves versus our egos. In Sikhi, we have a concept called home, which is what would be defined as ego, even though the gurus came way before Sigmund Freud. And my dad once shared it. He goes, it just, your ego is what makes you feel separate from everything else. It's the membrane that makes the drop think that is separate from the ocean, right? And so for me, we're all part of the ocean. There is no life and death. There is life and death. We don't have individual lives and because we're all part of life. The famous quote: "You're not stuck in traffic. You are traffic." Right.
I
So it's
love
the
that.
same thing. You don't have a life. You are life.
Mm.
So it's that concept of being a part of this thing, and the suffering comes from thinking you have a life, thinking you are separate from this. It's that membrane, and a lot of the work that we're doing is try to pop that membrane. And the moment you pop that membrane, you will become everything and nothing at the exact same time. And that could be liberation, or that could be a really good DMT trip, or anything in between. So what I could say has been realized on this journey is clarity that I believed could only be outsourced. So from a creative standpoint, I was like, oh, if I smoke some weed and get in a nice hot shower in the dark, like the ideas just start to fly. And it's like, yeah, they do. They really, really do. However, they won't compare it to what clarity can give you, but you got to earn the clarity. You got to earn the clarity with absolute blind faith. You got to be like, wait, you telling me this is going to be better than all that chemically induced help that I've had? And you're saying not only will it be better, I also don't wake up the next morning just super groggy and tired. And I'm also not paranoid and all that other stuff. That is something I was completely skeptical. And even where I'm headed now, I'm skeptical of some of the things that this journey is saying could be revealed in me. And, one day it just happens. These revolutions are very quiet within you. And one day you're just sitting on the subway and you're like, okay, I didn't even bring my headphones. I forgot I had my phone in my pocket and I'm just able to be here. I'm able to be present, which is, what we talk about in terms of meditation and stuff like that. And it's like, this didn't take me 25 years in the mountains. I'm in the middle of chaos, New York City doing it. And all it took was 2 weeks of just actively cutting off all the stuff, allowing myself to have all the tantrums when I don't want to do it, and just not even relying on discipline, just being like, but who will you be if you don't slip? Who will you be if you just don't slip? And that clarity has been really interesting because that clarity really, I realized the anxious feelings that we have, that we kind of carry, that creates a fog. The more anxious feelings we carry, the more we're going to react. The less anxious feelings we carry, the more we're going to respond. And the amygdala, which is what sets off, the little tiny almond part of our brain that sets off our anxious feelings, that decides what's danger and what's not. The amygdala, that's our survival brain, and then we have a prefrontal cortex, which is our logical brain. The amygdala is 11 times faster, which means or call it your monkey mind. It's always going to win the race when it comes to who gets to grab the steering wheel first. However, when we start to shorten that gap between it grabbing the wheel and the logical brain being like, "Hey, bro, I got this." That's how quickly can we shorten the gap between reacting and responding? Responding is with intention. Reacting is on autopilot based on the scripts that have been just ingrained to us over practice and habits, and we didn't even know we were doing it. And most of that stuff was developed when we were like 8 years old. Intention is I choose this response because I think this will be more helpful, more effective, and give me the results that I want. And that clarity has come where the reactions aren't so quick, and even when they are quick, I clock them quickly. This isn't For a long time. I was like, okay, well, am I going to become like this monk who's going to, be free of craving? And it's like, no, a craving is a memory of comfort. How am I going to forget what comfort felt like? I'm not going to forget the comfort of an orgasm. I'm not going to forget the comfort of a chocolate bar. However, its impact, its strength over me will dull. And it's not just it naturally happens, it happens with my efforts. If I walk down the street and see a beautiful woman, there's still a choice in terms of I might notice her and be like, oh wow. But now is it oh wow and stare for 10 seconds? Or is it oh wow, acknowledge, let's get back to focus. That is deciding where the air goes, which balloon gets bigger, which balloon gets smaller,
Yeah.
right? This journey that I'm on is not permanent. I have it. It was originally supposed to be set for 30 days, and then the voices decided to upsell me to another 90 days. And it's just hilarious. I'm like, oh yeah, I can get 30 days done. And then when you get to like day 24, it's like, well, after 30 days, you'll just get rebooted. And like if you go back to everything, then like it'll all come crashing. But if you want to do a full reset, we can sell that to you for 90 days. And then and you're just like, all right, cool. I'll do the 90-day reset. I don't think that the lady in my life will be okay with this, but I'll do it. And it's like, cool, cool, cool. We're just letting you know that the reset will happen at 30. The reprogramming will happen at 90. But if you want to be bulletproof, like you want to actually be bulletproof, that might take 6 to 18 months. And I'm just like, don't. I'm not
Yeah.
upselling anymore after this. I live in New York City. I'm here to enjoy life too. Rent's expensive. Like I want to make the most of this place. But it's
Right.
been, it's been as I said, it's been a journey where it's also just revealed to me. Like there's certain things that we consider vices that I have no relationship with, that have no hold on me. And there are certain things that are completely socially acceptable. Nobody would bat an eyelash if I participated in, let's say, like caffeine. Like, oh, I'm completely hooked. I am stuck with you. I am a slave to you. And it's like, okay, well, there isn't a lot of spiritual texts that talk about that. So what I realized was this, and then, I think especially for people who do lean heavily on spirituality, it's like this conversation has been happening forever. Like it's Roman 12:2. So it's do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by renewing of the mind. So I keep saying I'm doing a reboot, I'm doing a reset, renew the mind, right? Lao Tzu says, he who conquers many is strong, he who conquers himself is almighty, right? In the Bhagavad Gita 6:6, it says, those who conquer their mind becomes their best friend. Those who fail to, their mind becomes their worst enemy, right? And Sikhi, Manjita Jagjit, victory over the mind is victory over the world, right? This is in everything, even in I have it written down somewhere. Hold on, look. In the Quran, he who has succeeded who purifies it, he has succeeded who purifies it, the mind, and he has failed corrupts it. And it's just, and I think for me, and so much of my writing, I've avoided the binary. I've avoided the black and white. I always want to exist in the gray. That's where the nuance and the good conversations are. But not this time. This is binary. You're filling up the slavery balloon. You're filling up the sovereignty balloon. It's one or the other. They share the air. You decide where it goes. Call it love. Call it ego. Call it truth. Call it falsehood. Call it whatever you want. The balloon that you want to fill up is bigger and it can hold more air. And the more air it holds, the more capacity you have to deal with the challenges that life presented you. And every single decision we make will put a little bit more air in one, or take a little bit of air from one and put it in the other. And we get to choose every day. And it is a battle. It really is a battle. And all we get to do, as the Bhagavad Gita says, is you're only entitled to the labor. This is the battle that we fight. You just got to lace up those boots and get to work.
Hey, it's Julie. I just wanted to pop in really quickly. I'm so honored to be here on your path of being your truest, youest you. And what I really have seen in the 15 years that I have guided and worked with and coached and led heart centered leaders and conscious coaches and healers, soul seekers, light workers, change makers like you, is that it's not just about seeking change. It's about being called. It's about stepping into your higher self, your future self that you know you came here to live and to lead. So maybe you're feeling a little stuck or unclear, or you would love support to help you tune in and really access your heart centered dreams and desires to be fully self expressed, to be uplifting humanity, to be adding more light on this planet, to be expressing your gifts and your youest you. There are two really easy paths to do that with me. First, I have a manifestation breakthrough session that is all about rapid clarity, activation, and certainly intuition, or the deep dive. This is my intuitive mentorship journey. It is a 5 month transformative experience. This includes intuitive coaching, sacred container with accountability, and really helping you to tap into your greatest desires and dreams to help you access and really actualize your highest potential to be your youest you. So if you're interested in either ways to work together, go to julieriesler.com/mentorship. And that is where you can learn all about those options. And if you are leaning in, if it's feeling like a soul yes, I invite you to trust that and remember that what you are seeking is always seeking you. Much love. Mm. I think about it as like, which one are you feeding? Which I've heard before. Like,
Yeah,
and
which
it's
wolf are
always,
you feeling? Yeah.
yeah, which one? So a question for you, someone who's listening or someone out there that is struggling in a anxiety or some sort of feedback loop of feeling overwhelmed, anxious, what would you tell them? What would be the first thing you would tell them to do? And it could be something like, they didn't get a like the text they got back. It doesn't matter what triggered it because we don't care as much about the, not that we don't care, but less about the why and the what, more about that it's been triggered, that loop. What would you suggest, Humble? Like, what would be the first step?
So I would take a few steps back. I think if anybody knew what triggered it, they were already a few steps ahead. So I
Yeah.
think oftentimes we have these feelings. We don't even know we have these feelings. So
Yeah.
oftentimes what we call grief could be anxiety, what we call anger could be anxiety. So I think the ability to recognize that the signal is happening, I think is important. Recognize it the same way that we can recognize hunger. And even sometimes when we feel hungry, we're not actually hungry. We may just be dehydrated. We may just be stressed out, right? It's all happening right here, right? It's all just the butterflies. It's all something, right? And we're gonna, we want to just eat it and make it go away. So I think the first step is, yeah, realizing that we ha- it's about having a relationship with these emotions, and emotions are just a record of what we've gone through. The second thing I would say is, at the very least, we have to abandon this term "I'm anxious." We're making it our identity. We're painting this on there, you know, because it always has negative connotation. So instead, let's create a little bit of space and say, I feel anxious because, right? And I get it. Like you say, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm hungry. But when anybody says it, it doesn't sound like an identity. Well, you know me, I'm happy. So like no one thinks that means you're happy all the time. But when someone's like, no, 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 I'm anxious, or she's anxious, right? So I think it's become an identity. It's taken us into astrology space. It's taken us into all of this. And mental health talk right now is we're all self-diagnosing and we're ending the conversation at the diagnosis. Instead, let this be the beginning. So abandon I'm anxious. Say I feel anxious because this is a Mel Robbins idea. Identify the reason. And it's not easy. This instruction is simple. The task is not easy, but it's not supposed to be easy. And the prize is equal to the amount of work that you have to do. Um, that's where I would start. And then I think, as I said, going back to what I said earlier in the conversation, just the basics: more water, more sleep, more sunlight, less horrible people. I'm trying not to swear on your show. And try that, like, actively. Be like, well, how much water should I drink today? Let me drink more than I think. How much sleep am I getting? Let me get more. And again, it's easier said than done. Some people have lifestyles that won't let them get more sleep. I respect that. But if you can find a way, figure out a way, you will notice a difference. You will notice a difference if you have more water, get more sleep, and get more sunlight. Even those three, even staying away from the bad people, just starting with those. I think there's that. Once you start to realize, hey, no matter what, I have some control over my relationship with my emotions. This is when you start to get into the Humble the Poet's beard. You start getting tangled into my beard and you get this book. Because now what you'll realize is like, hey, let's stop talking about anxiety like it's a condition. It's not a condition to cure. It's a signal to listen to. And there are endless options and there are endless things that we're experiencing that are not our faults. And this is where we get to the bigger ideas. Anxiety is not a you problem. It's not a me problem. It's an us problem. The despair around anxiety is a societal problem. And we are not living in a world that is optimized to make your mental health feel better. We're not in that world. Okay? Just imagine for a moment the gravitational pull on Earth just got a little bit stronger. So gravity is what determines our weight, because there's much less gravity on the moon, so you're much less heavy, right? Imagine the gravity went the other way. So we all just got heavier. Everything got heavier. Lifting your leg to climb the stairs got heavier, but it happened across the whole world. Now imagine we blamed ourselves for that.
Mm,
Imagine we started shaming ourselves for being weak. That's what we're doing with anxiety. We are in this world, these colors, these lights, our exposure to horrible news 24/7, social media, all of this, it has increased the gravity and we are getting pushed down. And at the same time, it's been signaled that it's our fault. And all we got to do is buy some product, buy somebody's course, buy somebody's book for 3 easy payments of $9.95, and it'll all go away. It won't. My book won't cure anxiety. My book will take care of the despair you feel around anxiety. And spoiler alert, it'll just help you realize anxiety is not a problem. It's not going to give you a solution because there's no problem to solve. It's an experience to have. And what we have to realize is a lot of the things that are going to trigger anxiety for you are not your fault. It is not your fault there's so much sodium in McDonald's French fries. It's not your fault that the second you look at your phone, there's endless news and you feel left out if you don't know what's happening in the news or you don't know what's happening in social media. It's not your fault. And we as a society have to address this, and that's going to start by one person at a time. So I think that's where we would get. And then once you're able to do that, then you do the crazy stuff like I'm doing and just like discover all the things that make you feel safe and comfortable and just fire them and just sit with it, and sit and just feel it all and allow yourself to kick and scream and complain and negotiate and use your intelligence to rationalize giving in to a certain craving. Allow it all to happen. Allow it all to happen at your own home while you still have to go to work. Not in a cave, not in the jungles of the Amazon, not on a mountain in Tibet. Do it where you live. Do it where you are. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to reprogram ourselves for this world that we live in. We don't need to be paranoid about, you know, physical dangers in the jungle waiting to hunt us. We need to be more vigilant about how easy it is to get triggered, how many micro traumas we experience in a day, and how we don't even address them. That's like somebody poking you with pins all day. It's going to add up. You're going to lose blood. And this is the same thing that we have to understand when it comes to this. So, the work that I'm doing where and as I said, I'm only on day 34, 35 of it. I don't even know who I'll be. The joke I made with Jay Shetty is like, I don't know what day my eyes turn gray and I get a British accent. And it's like, I'm hoping it comes by day 45. It's like, I don't know where I'm going to be 2 months from now. I don't know if I'm going to be more motivated to have these conversations or less, and I may be easier to get a hold of and do 15 more episodes with you, or I'll be completely like, I'm over all of this and I'm going to call it, and I have no idea. And that's the exciting part. I love the fact that
mm,
I'm my age. I have no idea what my next chapter looks like and I'm not stuck in the routine. So
mm.
that's the journey that kind of spelled out for everybody. Um,
Yeah.
Someone explained to me, my book is the map and the work that I'm doing right now is the terrain. So, someone says, take a left here, go there. But, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. I get it. Three lefts and a right. And then when you start walking the path, you're like, oh, but these hills and these rocks and these thorns on these bushes, all of these, yeah, you told me they were on the map, but now I feel them. Now I'm getting tired. Now all of that's happening. And this is the big thing, as I said, this conversation may inspire you, but you can't skip the work. Your body can only catch up through practice, just repeated practice. And practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes progress. And all you want is progress.
Mm. Wow, and this is the book, Unanxious, anyone who's watching. It's really, really solid. So much in there. I mean, we could go on and on. I think I love what you just said. This is like the takeaway for everyone. Those things that um, I teach a yoga class a week for fun, and we call it the vrittis, like the things that are there, that are keeping your attention, that are cravings that you feel like you need. Fire them, fire all of them, and sit with it. I'm like, that's what everyone's avoiding, and that's what
Yeah,
we're being called. The call to action is actually sit with yourself, like sit with you. And for me, I was like, if I'm being really honest, I don't eat sugar, but I use stevia, and it's like a crutch. And that's my, I've talked about it here, but seriously, I'm back. I took it out, brought it back in. I took it out, and I'm like, darn it, like I'm gonna do that. I'm just committing. I'm like, I'm gonna do that because it's rent. It's taking rent for free. I can feel it.
yeah,
It's taking rent for free in my mind. And you've read so many beautiful reminders from different texts and spiritual wisdom. What we have is our connection to our inner self and our mind, and we have that. To have that sovereignty, that's where we get prosperity. I mean, that's it.
yeah. And I also want to remind people that it's not having these two balloons be equal size and all this talk of balance. No, you want to shrivel up that slavery balloon.
That's right.
And so, for example, if you decide, I guess you're talking about stevia in tea or coffee, I'm guessing, right?
Oh, my friend, it's
Oh,
in,
and everything.
oh, well, like, the protein powder I use, the whatever
Okay. So, what's the
just,
current non-negotiable that your mind has told you? Like, if we don't have at least
yeah.
stevia, it's not happening. What is it?
Well, oh, this is so funny because this is like real time. And I'm like, how does that look? So, for example, something very easy to make, I make these really awesome smoothies, right? And
Okay.
I put all kinds of stuff in it, and I use really good protein powders. I have different ones I've tested, I've muscle tested. They all have some sort of sweetener because they don't have sugar, usually monk fruit or stevia. The collagen that I use is hot chocolate has it. Every now and then, the ginger lemon shot that I'll take, not with alcohol, but digestive. If I add, seltzer, I'll put a tiny bit of stevia. Like it, I think when I ask myself, it's wanting, it's comfort, and there's a sweetness that I feel like I don't have in the food because I don't eat sugar
Yeah.
otherwise. So, yeah, and I would have to rethink how I'm
Well,
doing a
I don't
lot of.
know if you'd have to rethink it. I think, as I said, I think this is going back to this concept of the abstinence. It's like, we're saying, well, sit with yourself. It's feel your feelings, right?
Right.
So it's like, okay, the things, step one, because and this is kind of one of the things I've been thinking about as a child of an immigrant. It's like, hey, whatever bad food's in my fridge is getting eaten. I would never throw away any food. Um, so step one, let's talk about whatever you put stevia in, and then
Yep.
that's the one we'll start with, right? Like, let's start with the one that stevia doesn't have to be in there. And now you're actively like, hey, today
Yeah.
I am actively going to drink this without stevia,
Yeah.
and it's not going to give me the. And here's the thing: it's not just it giving you the relief;
The
it's
hit.
it's
Yeah.
you getting punished for not having the relief, right? So you're like, hey,
Mhm.
we're going in, and the hilarity of this is no different than saying, hey, everybody, we're gonna hold warriors pose for an extra 25 seconds once it
Right.
starts burning, or lotus. I don't know. I suck at yoga. I don't know which ones are hard. But it's the same concept where you're like, look, you could probably do it for 10 seconds. Today we're signing up to do it for 25. And it's going to burn, and you know it's going to burn, but your mantra is this sucks, but I'm not in danger,
Right.
right? My legs aren't going to fall off if I hold this longer. At worst, I'll collapse. It's the exact same mindset. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to drink this. We're going in raw. We're not doing it without the stevia that we're used to. And our
Yeah.
body, our identity is going to be like, wait, this is new, which means we're going to pretend it's danger and flood you with adrenaline and cortisol, and you're going to sit with it. And you're doing it and the thing when you do it voluntarily is that's the rep of resilience. Voluntarily putting yourself in these stressful situations.
Yeah.
And trust me, on this journey that I'm on, my list keeps increasing of all these ridiculously stressful situations that I had to voluntarily put. I thought it was just, as I said, quit all the big stuff
Yeah.
and just do that for 90 days. It's like, no, you address that within 13 days. We got to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think that would be a really good place to start.
So
Keep
good.
keep keep the stevia with all the other stuff until it runs out, and then don't bring it back the next time. And
Yeah.
I have collagen. It's bland and plain. I don't know. I don't. But again,
Yeah.
and what you start to realize too is none of these. I guess none of these addictions are the same for people. Like they're not, I so one of the there's a few things that will never come back after my 90 days. And the one that surprised me the most was multitasking. So that's
Mm,
so I'm allowed to drink alcohol again, but I'm not allowed to eat in front of the TV again. So eating in front of the TV is more dangerous to my spirit than alcohol.
mm. How did you come up with by how you felt, by how it felt when you started to think
No,
about
no,
it?
I'm journaling and I'm
Ah,
using multiple AIs. So I set protocols
mm,
via AI. And then, so I'll ask an
yeah,
AI, can I do this? And it'll be like, no. And then I'll look for another AI that says yes. And then they always all agree with each other. Then I'll go to a different AI company. And it's just like all of a sudden everybody's on the team. And this is not just what can I eat? What can I do? This is also in terms of cutting people off. This is also in all of this. And I'm just like, wait, how are you guys all agreeing with this? I don't want to do it. And it's usually that's the sign. Um, so that's kind of where it is, and it's also just as I said, like the bigger idea isn't food in front of TV. The bigger idea is something on the outside is needed for me to
yeah,
feel safe and comfortable. And I
right.
think because we eat so much and so often, that's where it is. And even prior to all of this, I wasn't consuming a lot of alcohol to begin with. I don't think I'm going to go back to alcohol, and I think that's probably what the real trick of all this is. It'll say, yeah, you can if you want, and then I probably won't want to because my baseline will be so refreshed. I'm sure
Yeah.
that first shot would take me to the moon and then take me below hell in terms of a hangover because of my new virgin baseline. So I probably won't. But I think it's just been interesting where it's like that was one of I think the rewiring of your brain that comes through multitasking and the stress you puts on your brain, that's what's impacting your resilience and your sovereignty because there is no multitasking.
That's
And
right.
I
No,
think,
that's true.
and which is an
Right.
extremely polarizing idea for some people, but they need to understand multitasking is the same as trying to count to 10 and say the alphabet at the same time.
Yeah. Your
You're
brain can't
you're
do that.
switching. You're switching.
Yeah.
You're doing it quickly, but you're switching. You're doing one thing, then one thing, then one thing, and that strain that you're putting on your brain is hurting your resilience, and it's going to lead you to more medicating, avoiding, and distracting. So now we know no more stevia for you.
Yeah. Everyone knows now.
That's the
I feel
beginning.
like we're all on this is not what I was going to be thinking I was talking about, but it's good. No,
That's how it begins.
yeah, my intuition around it, I felt it.
Yeah,
It's funny, yesterday, this is how it usually happens. The inner voice that's calm and collect, and I know it's connected to truth for me. It just said, maybe not anymore. Maybe
mm,
not today.
yeah,
And I thought, oh, damn, that's the voice. I know who you are. And I've done this before. And I thought, okay. And I remember I got my herbal tea, iced tea after yoga, and I was filling it up, and I thought, I'll just have half of the packet today. I'll do half of the packet, and then tomorrow I won't. And I thought, oh, I'm negotiating now. Oh, isn't that interesting? And I watched it, and I was like, oh, look at there's a wow. You are connected and attached to this. So I'm on it. Like I'm on to myself. It's really sitting with it, and
yeah,
I've done this before, and I know how it feels to feel free of not needing to have that for comfort, for whatever it
yeah.
is, right? And so I'm so glad. I mean, I didn't know I was going to have this experience on our conversation. I hope if you're listening, you're still with us. First of all, we love you. Thank you. Maybe you have a stevia or sugar, maybe it's sugar, maybe whatever it is. I hope you take this and apply it for you and whatever is showing up in your life. For me, that this is the big one, and I've noticed it. And now saying it to you, Humble, I'm like, yeah, that is the one. That is the one for right now that is just glaring for sure. That's
Yeah,
the one. And I
I,
don't want to, but that's okay. I've
yeah.
done
I think there's two things I want to
that.
chime in with that. I think the first one is what I've realized. It's like when you, and this is going back to that love book, when you're in a relationship, like a romantic relationship, and you're ending it, let's say you're the one to end it, you're not ending the relationship with that person. You're ending the relationship with the version of you who has to exist to be with that person, right? So
Well
when you
said.
so the negotiations, because think about it, even when you want to break up with someone, there's a lot of internal negotiations. You know, the moment the negotiation process begins, the relationship's over because we shouldn't be negotiating at that point. But what the negotiations really is that version of you fighting for his life,
Yeah.
right? So we call So, we often in the spiritual places talk about the ego death, but we make it seem like it's this massive climax of like spirituality. No, you're aiming for 1,000 funerals. We're trying to catch, because our ego. What happens is, the stevia identity. You might be able to be like, nope, you got to go, you got to die, and then after maybe 2 weeks of no stevia, the cravings will stop. The part of you that viewed the cravings, the memories of the comfort, was like, yeah, well, I had more comfort even before approaching the stevia than I had without it. You kill that version of you. So there's this constant identity kill. And then what happens is part of it, and we can call it the ego, will jump into the next one. and
Yeah.
and,
Oh,
and this
sure.
and this is where I'm letting you know, and maybe you follow up with me on this. Um, it's not stevia, it's not social media, it's not smoking cigarettes, it's everything,
Oh, yeah.
and it will only get addressed when we commit to addressing everything. We have to commit to address the relationship between the stuff outside of me that I've been outsourcing to make me feel safe, because I realized this, like, even when I was like doing this, and I was like, no, like, I've been on like Reddit, and I've like read the no masturbation groups, and everybody's just miserable. And then, I was like, so I'm not putting myself through that. And then it was like, oh, because they just picked that one thing, and they were still filling up their balloon by being on social media. They were still filling up their balloon by doing all these other. And again, there's, even to this point, after a month, there's still sources of dopamine that I'm not aware of. And the source of dopamine I recognize today. I was like, I live in New York. Just walking outside, just seeing stuff will give me dopamine. Just the novelty of being in this crazy city will give me dopamine. So it's easy, right? I can still kind of scratch those itches in ways that aren't my fault. I'm not actively chasing it. You'll find stevia on the streets here, right? Or you'll find the sweetest cane sugar on the streets over here. It'll pop. Your
Uh,
eyes will pop. And so that's when this commitment to being like, no, all of it's got to go, which is just such an overwhelming idea. And this didn't start with me with all of it. This started with me was like one situation, one little source of dopamine that I was gonna stop, and then I was struggling, and then it was like, no, it's because you're chasing, you're outsourcing feeling comfortable and safe. The entire outsourced department has to get fired. But then also inside you, there's an identity. Maybe it's that HR department that did all that hiring, which is like, if you get rid of them, I no longer matter. And we have so much history together. This will be death, and it will fight to the death. And the cravings get higher and stronger and more intense, right near, like, it won't die in a whimper. It will have a last stand. And then when it dies, you don't know, it's not a triumph. You've moved on to the next one, and you don't even realize it until like one day you check the calendar and you're like, oh, it's been like 6 weeks and I haven't even thought about stevia.
right.
And then maybe then you're like, I should let me put some on my tongue and see what happens. No,
Right.
at some point you have to,
Yeah.
be able to figure certain, and as I said, there's chemical sides to this. But there's enough anecdotal stories even with people around cigarettes and alcohol, which is just like, we keep
Yeah.
thinking it's just chemical, but there's a story that we tell. And if that story is
Absolutely.
broken, you might be like, oh, now stevia could come back once a week, once a month,
Yeah.
and my
Absolutely.
and my synapses aren't firing whenever I have it. But that might not be 16 weeks. It might be a year from now. I don't know. As I said,
Yeah.
I'm still new in this journey as well. But I do think if you just focus on stevia, it may just create a different. It may just push you into another outsourcing, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you might find something else.
Yeah. This reminds me a little bit, and I know we're going to wrap in a minute, but I have to say this has been really fascinating and so helpful. And it reminds me, I love, I have a lot of people on here. We talk about the Course in Miracles, a lot of the study of that. And one of the things about it, it talks about it's not a course about love. It's about removing all the stumbling blocks, the blocks in the way of experiencing love. And I feel this is so similar. This is so similar. All these aspects that we, the part of us that thinks it's an identity, right? Like, I love what you said. We want those identities to be distinguished or to be diminished, to be released, because in the end, of course, I love what you said earlier, we're not the drop, we're the ocean. And so the true self, I am not someone who, I'm not this the person that eats stevia. I'm not the, I am beyond that, but to experience it, you have to go through the feelings. You have to sit with it. We have to be willing to be in the discomfort and all those areas that are the stumbling blocks, being willing to look at them. And that piece, I'm like, yeah, I mean, what else are we doing here? I always say, what am I doing here if I'm not willing to look at everything and sit with it? I mean, that's, I believe our soul, we chose to be here, to evolve, and to remember
Yeah,
who
and
we
I
are.
think it's also a really good point too, is we're already, as you were saying that, I was just thinking like, I go, maybe we're just, making that raindrop or that water drop membrane thinner and thinner with this work, and we keep peeling the layers off as we can try to get to this this oneness. But I think it's also like we can also think about so many of these outsourcing activities. What they really literally give us is presence. You know, it gives us a break from having a mind that is thinking about the future and the past.
Yes.
If you're in a sports car and you drive really fast, your mind's not wandering. You're completely in the moment, and people get a rush from that, and they call it an adrenaline rush. All of a sudden, it's a good adrenaline. It's great. If you gamble, some people garden. Like they have these different activities, and all the activities that we really enjoy are, let's say, spending time with a child or a grandchild or your puppy. What the reason we enjoy these is because they allow us to be present and not in the future and not in the past. And what we have right now is we've made peace that existence is specks of this, specks of being present, right? Where amongst all the chaos, amongst all the crap, I will have these moments of joy, these little tiny moments of joy, and it makes life worth it, which I completely agree with. However, if we start this journey in this relationship, that presence gets stretched,
Yes.
and that's all. And then that presence feels great no matter what's happening.
Yeah.
We already know, like, it doesn't have to be euphoria and winning the lottery. It could literally be, scratching my dog's ears, but being present, just watching her face, or being with a loved one, or as I said, like, and even those outsourced ones, it's gambling. You're in the moment. You're nowhere else. Your eyes, like, you're waiting for that card to turn. That rush that people chase, and it's like, yeah, that presence can exist internally, and we just live in an extremely, extremely, extremely distracting world. That's not our fault, and it's by design because everybody's business model is sell people dopamine. Sell them coffee, sell them social media, sell them convenience, sell them all these things. People get dopamine just opening up an Amazon package, right? The
Oh, yeah.
anticipation, the reward, the release, the tension, all of that. And it's like this world is designed for it because it was designed by the smartest people in the world who were paid by the richest people in the world to keep us addicted to things. These aren't failures on our part. But the more we become aware of it and start to see it and realize the Wizard of Oz is just a little man, then the more we get to stretch out our presence. And then the more we enjoy where we're at. And this is not something I would have thought of. When I did the Jay Shetty live show, I bluntly said it to the audience. I'm like, I'm not the I get high off life guy. I am the I get high off things that make you high guy. You know,
That's funny.
yeah, but that's who I really am. I would never want to say like these kind of empty quotes. And it's just like, now here I am. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, this stuff's making sense. And like,
Yeah.
the 3 hours a week now that I can listen to music, which is my 3 1 hour gym trips, that's the only time I listen to music. The music reminds me of when I smoke weed and listen to music because I'm not doing it all day, all night. I'm not doing it to avoid life while I'm traveling or at the airport or sitting on a plane. I don't do that anymore. I allow myself to live all this stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm recalibrating myself so I can enjoy all this stuff. And the reason we outsource it is because we've numbed ourselves. So we need more and more and more. We need more and more hot sauce. But we just got to realize our relationship isn't just with one bottle of hot sauce. It's all of them.
Yeah.
And unless, and maybe it starts with you and stevia, and I'm excited to see if it leads you down a whole path, remembering that none of this is permanent. This is just a reboot and a reprogramming. And as I said, 30 days before they upsell you to the 90 days, and then let's see what happens after that.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this on and I'm going to encourage everyone listening. I love your book. I feel like get unanxious and find what your stevia or hot sauce or whatever it is. And
And see the ocean that it leads you. That's one
yeah,
river that's going to lead you to an ocean that has a bunch of other rivers, and you're going to have to plug them all up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said, remember what are you feeding? What balloon are you where are you
Yeah.
putting the oxygen? No, it's really this is what I love too, Humble, with you is it's so obvious, like, kind of the pleasant surprise how this it found you and how you may not have even realized you were going to be writing and talking about this. It's so obvious that you are living it and breathing it and
I wouldn't
just
say
have
pleasant surprise. I would say surprise. This is,
surprise. Okay.
yeah.
Pleasant on this end because we're benefiting from it. For
Yeah.
me, others, right. For you personally,
I feel
right.
like I walked into a room and a personal trainer was just like, all right, let's get to work. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
all
yeah,
of,
yeah.
and now I'm just getting beat with a stick to train every day. And I was like, I didn't ask for any of this. And then slowly I was like, ooh, I'm starting to look good in the mirror. Let's keep going. But
Right.
in the beginning, I totally felt like I got conned into this and I have no idea. I'm not even exactly sure how to this day. But I think that's probably, and I'll probably just make it up eventually and just try to make it sound magical and mythical. Like, there's always the story I was raised with in Sikhi was like Guru Nanak Dev Ji disappeared into the river for 3 days and came back enlightened. I was like, yeah, I'll make up a story like that, just for the marketing. And meanwhile, it's not. It's just me journaling and coming to this realization that it's like, oh, I'm not intellectualizing my fears. I'm romanticizing my addictions, and
Hmm.
I have escaped so many cages that I thought I was free, and then I realized I just hadn't traveled far enough to hit the next fence. And when I hit
Hmm.
that fence, it was decorated so beautifully. And that was my negotiations, my intellectualizing, my romanticizing. And I was like, oh, I built this place.
Yeah.
And I built it thinking it was a fortress and only recently realizing it's a prison.
Well said, my new friend. I feel like, well, this whole thing really, thank you for sharing so openly. There were a lot of mic drop moments, and I just know this is going to be helpful to so many. And, to remember that it really starts with awareness and daring yourself to be brave enough to sit with the feeling, to sit through it, to be with it. Um, and I think about, this too shall pass. At some point, there will be a moment. I don't know when. I'm going to start with my stevia and I'm going to keep you posted. I'm going to tell you right now, you don't even know what's about to happen. I'm just kidding.
Well, and I want to add, like, for those, as I said, and you're in yoga. So I think that's the perfect analogy, which is you don't, when you hold a pose, you don't say this too shall pass. You
Yeah,
you hold it so you can hold it longer. If anything, you want the tension, right?
that's
Unless,
true.
if you're a beginner, the tension might come at 5 seconds. But then let's say you're a pro and the tension doesn't come for 3 minutes. You don't say this pass. You're like, oh, I got to go for 3 minutes 30. So
Yeah,
that's what this will be. This will be
yeah.
like, oh no, I become a masochist. I need the
Right.
tension. What is the next stevia? What is the next one? What is the next one? What are
Right.
all the challenges? Because I'm not waiting for this to pass. I'm looking for the new thing that I can sit with. And
Yes.
you become a glutton for all this suffering. And then every now and then you do a podcast and get a bunch of compliments. You're like, obviously it's working because everyone loves me on the podcast now.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's good. I like it. No, I like it. I think always, the way I look at it is what's for the highest good for me and for everyone I'm here to serve, period. And
Mm.
so just the discomfort hopefully passes, which I found it does.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay forever. Thank goodness. And we can all do this. We can
Yes.
all do this. You're doing it. Now I'm going to be doing it again, whatever it is. And thank you. I really appreciate you and your energy, your spirit, your humility, humble the poet. You are really, I appreciate all the wisdom. And I know that I mean, this book it was really fun to go through and read it. And just you have a lot of tips and quotes and so much there. It's really helpful. So beautiful work that you did. And thank you for being here. I'm glad we were one of the podcasts that you chose to come on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to say thank you to who you're still here, still listening. We love you. Thank you. And really, really hope that and intended, we set an intention before we started that this conversation, it speaks to you at the deepest level at your soul, and that it's not just to listen and learn, but to take action, to try these things. And even if it's starting with more sleep, more water, better nutrition, starting there, hydration, sunlight, and just being around people that lift you, right? And so hopefully this uplifted you, my friend. Love to you and your you is to you. Humble. Thank you. Thank you. Much
Thank you.
love.